All right, here we go. So, welcome to November's Networking at Noon. Today, our industry focus will be shifting to look at the landscape of education and professional development during this COVID-19 time. We're very fortunate today to have our panelists, Mr. William Guerrero, Vice President for Finance and Administration for Ithaca College, Dr. Jeffrey Matteson, District Superintendent and CEO of Tompkins-Seneca-Tioga BOCES, Mary Opperman, Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Cornell University, and via phone, Ms. Carrie Whitmore, Director of Continuing Education and Workforce Development with Tompkins Cortland Community College, or TC3. Per usual, we do want to give a huge thank you to our Networking at Noon series sponsors, One Step Coaching, Sharaba Walker, Hilton Garden Inn, CFCU Credit Union, and Sheldrake Point Winery. Without your support, we would not be able to provide you this amazing content every month. So without further ado, what I would like to do is just to let everyone know that we are more than happy to have you post any questions that you may have in the chat. We will have some Q&A time saved at the end for our panelists to take any questions that we may have. And at this point, I would like to turn things over to Jennifer Tavares, the Chamber's president, to get us started today.
Thanks so much, David. Thanks everyone for being here. It's great to see you all. This is obviously a very interesting industry topic, I think, particularly in this community. I'm sure most of you know that so much of our economy is driven by the education industry in general. In any community, education is a large component of the employers and the workforce, but obviously here, there's so much related to our higher ed partners that really does drive a lot of all of the innovation and the business activity and the size of our workforce and the type of people that live and work in Tompkins County. So I think understanding what's going on in this industry and how things might look in the next few years and hearing from these panelists is a really valuable discussion to have at this time. So we're going to just start with each of you introducing yourself, telling us a bit more about your role, your organization that you work for. I'm sure we've all heard of all of them, but share whatever you think will be most valuable, how long you've been sort of involved or doing what you're doing, just to give us a little bit more context before we get started with the other questions. How about I will start with Mary because you're the first one on my screen.
Thanks, Jennifer. So one of the signs of the time is that was my dog barking. Sorry. My name is Mary Opperman. I'm the Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer for Cornell University. So in addition to HR and my portfolio, I have Title IX and equity, diversity and inclusion, and economic advancement. I've been at the university over 20 years, been in our community for the same amount of time. Happy to be here today.
Thanks, Mary. Now I'm going to move over to Jeff.
Hi there, everybody. Happy Thursday, or as I like to say this week, the second Monday of the week, followed by the second Friday of the week, which is fantabulous. I've been at TSD BOCES as the district superintendent. It's my 8th year. We have, obviously, as an educational service agency, we're required to be the experts in our field because we do some very specific educational programs for students with pretty severe needs. So our professional development offering is big on campus for our own people, but we also have a regional school success department that does a lot of professional development for the region as well. Just so you know, we have a reach of all of our component school districts, and we have a partnership with a 4 BOCES region as well with professional development. And that would be all the way up to Oswego BOCES, OCM BOCES, which is next door in Syracuse and Cortland, and Cayuga BOCES. So it's a pretty large region. Those folks work pretty well together. I'm looking forward to talking to you about how things are so much different right now than they were just a year ago.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to move to Bill now. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Hi, thank you, Jennifer and David, for the opportunity. As you can tell, I'm in my car. Don't worry, I'm not driving. I did stop, as I'm driving to a business partner meeting in this kind of, as we said, new normal. But my name is Bill Guerrero, and I'm the Vice President for Finance and Administration at Ithaca College. I've been there for almost 2.5 years now. I'm looking forward to this conversation with a lot of partners that certainly familiar with and other boards and so forth. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And then we have Carrie, who hopefully can hear us, and I see her unmuting.
Hi, how are you? So my name is Carrie Whitmore. I am with Tompkins Community College. I've been with the college for about 8.5 years. Most recently, I was promoted to Director of Continuing Education Workforce Development in January 2019. So relatively new to the director role, but really excited about the new innovative things that we are doing at the college to help our community.
Thanks for that, Carrie, and thanks for all those introductions, everybody. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the impact of everything that we've all been experiencing together this year. Given the impact on certainly the global economy and the global industry. So I know you're probably seeing a lot of things from what your peers are experiencing in other places. I'm sure you pay a lot of attention to the broader industry. And then also looking specifically at the challenges on the ground and that you've been working to manage in your roles here. So I want to talk about what are the biggest challenges to your industry and how you've adjusted your tactics to overcome those challenges. And I know the answers are going to be, I'm sure there's going to be some similar themes, but also some really unique differences here. So I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say. I think I'm going to do it in a different order. I'm going to start with Bill. I'm going to keep switching up our order because what else can we do to make Zoom calls exciting, right? Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. All right, I will lead off. It's definitely challenging times. There's no doubt, and I would say just one unique perspective, or a couple of unique perspectives that Ithaca College has taken is certainly the impact in our larger community and what our role is, Ithaca College is with the larger community. So I would say, as most people know, that Ithaca College went remote in March, and we continued throughout the fall semester. And those were really, really hard decisions. A lot of discussions because of the impact of all stakeholders. So not just only our students and our parents, our alums and faculty and staff, but ultimately, when we think about our economic development, our economic impacts in downtown, we certainly understand that big component of it. And we're really, really mindful and to see how we can help. So that broader partnership with the community, certainly with the chamber or, the economic development boards and so forth, really, really important. Most people don't know that we're going to be starting off a physician assistant program. We're going to be doing that, and we pressed forward on that. Even in this economic downturn, we pressed forward with it because it's definitely financially a challenge all across the board in higher ed, and certainly Ithaca College is no different. The second thing I would say is just the impressive amount of collaboration with the other schools. With Cornell, and I know Mary's on the call, and friends from TC3, but even SUNY Cortland. I mean, we've done some really, really good things, not only just on our testing and communication and how we're opening up our school, but the overall collaboration between the schools on how we could share services or how we can share ideas so we don't overlap and really hurt each other, I think has been really, really helpful during this challenging transformation with this unprecedented times. So that's how that would be my perspective from Ithaca College.
Thanks, Bill. Trying to help someone else get into our program here. So sorry I had a minute of delay there. Carrie, while we have you, and hopefully you still have a good connection, let me move to you.
Sure. So from the college perspective, I think, right now we're living our biggest challenge, right? We're learning to be nimble, responsive, and innovative. It was really essential for us to recognize that what we've always done is not going to be enough where we are right now. Our provost and his team has done a really great job with faculty to develop several different modalities for our classes. And we expect, to continue using those modalities modalities that really meet the needs of our students well into the future, so that's not, you know, a temporary thing. And we also think that it's important for us to recognize that there are still a good portion of our students that prefer the traditional college experience, which is one of the contributing factors to seeing us being down, you know, across the board from the college perspective. We'll still want to continue to have, you know, evaluate how we can use technology, make it easier for students to gain access, including our non-traditional students, while also evaluating and addressing equity gaps in access to technology. Our technology department has been working really hard to address some of these issues. We have laptops and hotspots students can check out of the library. Our wireless access has been expanded to cover our parking lots to allow for, you know, computer access, Wi-Fi access while our building is closed. You know, we're taking small steps, but we, you know, hope to continue to assess and evaluate to keep those small steps moving forward through the pandemic and then post-pandemic, so that, like, you know, we're continuing to evolve to meet our needs of the community.
Thanks, Carrie. I think we caught most of that. Obviously, a lot of quick response action and investments in new technologies to support as many of your students as possible at TC3. I think that's wonderful. Mary, I'm going to go to you now. I think probably Cornell's response has been the most widely publicized, but I'm sure you can tell us something that we don't already know.
Well, I'm not going to go back over things that you all already know. So I think our biggest, our primary decision that we made early on was to follow the science. And so when we first looked at what this would mean to the university and to the community, we didn't have a perspective in mind. We wanted to consider whether or not our main missions of discovery and teaching and service could be advanced in any number of ways, fully remote, in a hybrid manner, inviting our students back. And we followed where the science took us. It wasn't necessarily a decision that everyone agreed with in the beginning, but it was a decision that we made based on the information that our scientists were sharing with us. And so one of our biggest challenges is that to open and invite the students to come back required us to stand up a really rigorous testing and follow-up process that we do every single day. That wasn't something we had built. It wasn't something we'd ever done before. So we had to scale up quickly to take on a really different kind of a challenge. And, you know, I'll say, we all know this, but we forget sometimes. The virus is still with us, and it's always been with us. And so our definitions of success have to be based on not the eradication of the virus, which we hope will come in the future, but rather how we continue to move forward with the reality that the virus is still here and will spike and happens to be spiking now. So I think we have we've done a good job moving forward under our strategy, but it's a strategy that we have to have all of our shoulders sort of on the wheel every single day because the situation is fluid.
Thanks, Mary. And finally, let's move to Jeff.
Good afternoon again. In the spirit of doing things we've never had to do before, going back, 7 months ago when we first had the closure, we were also getting the really bad news from the state about their financing. So for our local school districts, so we had reopened the final service requests for our districts, which resulted just in the professional development arm of a $400,000 hit, which is a big hit because we were still on the old model of back when Race to the Top came in 2010, 2011, where you had developed expertise in every content area. They went to Albany, had a bunch of information poured down their throats, came back and delivered it back home. So we had a lot of staffing tied to those numbers. And basically, within 2 months, we flipped the model. We had to eliminate positions, many of them by attrition, thankfully, and went from a model that was we provide the person to do the PD delivery to a coordinator model where we coordinate connections between vendors with the expertise that the districts need and the vendor. So the vendor and the district get together, we coordinate, we put the schedule together. We still do some service delivery in a couple of areas, especially in special education for professional development in our districts. The model flipped, and what's interesting is, in spite of the cut, we have higher attendance to our offerings than we've ever had. The old model really was had gotten a little bit dusty. And one of the things I've said all along here, let's not unlearn the good things we've learned. So I don't see us, we come out the other side of this thing maybe a year from now where people can do a few more things in person, going back to that model where we've got a person sitting here in their office just trying to dream up a professional development opportunity to bring people to come to campus to deliver it, when we really need to just be very efficient and hit our marks for what people actually need. We've eliminated almost all travel, virtually all travel to any kind of training, professional development. Everything is done kind of this modality that we're doing today. A lot more of the one-on-one coaching, things that we had not been doing before that are not that difficult to do. And you think of the inefficiency of the number of people that we were putting in cars and sending hours away, even an hour to a training up in Syracuse and an hour back, and rethinking all of that and how do we do those things in a way that still hits our targets, saves everybody's money, keeps people in their classrooms, at their work sites as much as possible, and keeps them safe. Bottom line is we're in the middle of the global pandemic. We know that kids' learning is suffering. We're just going to have to accept that until we get fully back to the model that we know is a little more effective, we've got students falling further and further behind, especially those who may not have an identical experience in the remote part of a hybrid model as if they're in an in-person model. So we're going to have a lot of making up to do on the backside of this, which means we're going to need to develop some expertise. We've always had to develop the specialties in our special ed area of how we catch students up. They're guaranteed to have 1 year of learning by attending school for a year, but how do we do 1.5? How are we going to get students caught up and then go beyond is going to be the challenge, because it's not just for students who had learning difficulties. This is almost all the students have had learning loss. This is a massive challenge for the education altogether, but just wanted to make sure you knew that there's a different model out there than we've ever used in the past. Some things are going really well with it. Some things we're still learning. And we're just trying to see our way forward.
Thanks, Jeff. Wow, there's a lot in there we could follow up on more. I'm going to do my best to resist asking follow-up questions until we get to the end here. So I think that was a nice segue, actually, beyond just moving online and all these other changes that you both through the K-12 and the career in tech ed and also in higher education have already implemented. How are all of these things, and how is the prolonged time frame that we're going to be dealing with going to impact things for you moving forward? As you look to the next couple of years of admitted classes at college level, I was just like, I guess just in my mind, just thinking about what Jeff was just saying, I'm thinking it's one thing to have more time with students to catch them up, but if they're graduating seniors or if they're about ready to be moving into college, what do Mary and Bill and Carrie's teams need to look at those students coming in differently, different levels of preparation than maybe you could have relied on, a year or two ago. So just curious how all these things are playing together and what you're seeing, those changes to be on the ground moving forward. Why don't I start with Mary this time?
So I thought Jeff brought up some really important points. And I guess I would say in the broadest sense, You know, I don't know. We often talk about this being the new normal or going back to normal. We can't unlearn what we've been through, and the impacts are pretty significant here. We haven't talked about the impact on employees. They're significant. People are doing the best they can in a situation that that just has been unrelenting since March. And you start to get a little bit of optimism, and then something happens and you're sort of thrown back into it. So universities are going to have to think about not only in admissions processes, what is the potential impact on admissions for folks, for students who may not have been had the same experience in their junior and senior years. But also then what additional help will they need when they get here? So the core of the opportunity for them remains, but they may need additional support that they wouldn't have needed had the traditional learning experience followed through for them. And we had a group of graduating seniors that had a few months of impact. Now it looks as though we'll have a whole nother group that was in their junior year when this started and be graduating, perhaps while we're still in the same situation, or at least the majority of their senior year was spent in this. So there's a lot to be done. There's, there's also the mental health impacts of being in such a difficult situation for so long. A lot of people are feeling very isolated. They're dealing with incredible stresses in their families, their own health concerns, the health concerns of others, for employees, the issue of dealing with student learning and if they have children, maybe being apart from their extended families for a long period of time. So how we move forward in part requires us to be honest about where we will be when we get out of this phase of the pandemic, and then address it with optimism, but with a clear eye to the fact, as Jeff said, that there has been an impact here.
Thanks, Mary. How about we go over to Carrie now? What's changing in your world, and how are things going to look in the next couple years at TC3?
So at TC3, we've always recognized, it's always been our mission, to help students. A lot of times students come with us, they're adult students or they're first generation students. So, the pandemic has mostly exacerbated the barriers that we have seen for our students. But, it's given us an opportunity to really take a step back and evaluate what success means for a student, and to recognize that for each student, success is something different. Success for one student might be taking, two classes to be able to get a promotion at work. For another student, it might be taking a couple of semesters to transfer to Cornell University. For others, it might be, the full college associate's degree and then heading to the workforce. So for us, it's really diversifying our perception of success and really understanding what that success means for the student, and creating on and off ramps in their educational path throughout their lifetime. So that way we can be available to meet them where they're at and to help them with their goals, whether it be their short-term goals or their long-term goals. One of the things that we've done is, now we have online tutoring for students, which never was available before. We have mental health appointments available online for our students. And these are all services that, we feel really strongly about that need to be available, post-pandemic, both in person and online, because it's going to meet the needs of a variety of our students, and making sure that we continue to do that. We've also taken away placement testing, and we look at how we enroll students in the college. How can we make that easier for students? Placing them appropriately in class, not having them in classes that they don't necessarily need. So it's really given us an opportunity to just look at everything with a full new eye, and make sure that the student is at the center of that, and their success is at the center, and continually evolve to meet their needs.
Thanks, Carrie. Bill?
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's perspective on this. I'll take maybe coupling off of Mary's perspective is, we have validated that majority can work from home, can work remotely, and you can be successful, meaning you can get the work done. But it does create a lot of those challenges that was stated. I mean, isolation, lack of connection to your coworkers, and your institution. We really have to, work on that. I think that's going to be a big piece that we're unsure of, because we all want to come back into the office. We all want to work there, but is that the best way to de-densify your institution going forward? And, regardless of the news with Pfizer and so forth, I mean, I can't imagine this, a vaccine fully deployed, within the next 12 months. And so when we think about the next 12 months or 18 months or whatever it is, trying to create or maintain community on your campus with your faculty and staff is a big piece. With the remote work environment, and then the segregation of essential workers and non-essential workers. And I mean, there's so many of these essential workers that are just doing so many amazing things for our students and our faculty and staff. And I think of our dining, I think of our IT folks, I think of certainly our facility folks and the faculty that are coming into campus and teaching. Really, really important. But then you have the let's say the non-essential that are working from home. How do you keep connected with them? So it's going to require a lot of intentionality on that end. And then the other thing I would just state is the IT focus. We did a great job at our school on flipping the switch, going to remote pretty quickly. Our board of trustees did an amazing job of making some really wise investments prior to the pandemic to allow it. But ultimately, when you think about being in this, hybrid or remote environment going forward, I think the needs that you were mentioning, Jennifer, of students coming into school, it's kind of unknown still. When you think about, ensuring broadband access, assuming that they have the right software, assuming they even have laptops. I mean, you get into a lot of those challenges that, students may have had those gaps, in high school. They're going to continue to have the gap in, when they come to our institution. And how do you address those? And so those are really conscious things that we need to keep pressing forward. And, and then I would be optimistic. I'd be optimistic going forward is that, the cliche is you don't waste a crisis. Well, I'll be optimistic that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity now for Ithaca College where we can really go into online learning as a diversifying our revenue streams that we've never done before. And I think that could be really, really awesome to complement already on the ground residential experience. So I'm excited about that component.
Thanks, Bill. I don't know if I've heard the cliche, don't waste was it disaster? Don't waste anyway. That's a good one. Jeff, back to you. If I'm not mistaken.
Sure. So I guess the only thing I would add to some of this is I've seen some things in the chat about new partnerships and the like, and opportunities that have come out of this. And I'll say one of the challenges we had was we had New Visions core classes taking place up on Cornell's campus, haven't been able to enter the campus, but still had 30 students that needed to have classrooms from 2 different New Visions programs. We started trying to house them here on campus and cobbling some things together, but TC3 has opened up more of their campus to us. We already have our P-Tech program out there, so we now have New Visions engineering out there. We're able to house our New Visions Life Science on our campus. So we're getting deeper relationships with some of our natural partners, but I would also say during this, the really constant, consistent communication out of the provost's office at Cornell, out of CMC, and how accessible, Marty Stallone has been, and out of Frank Krupa at the health department, has allowed us at the senior level to keep monitoring all this stuff so we can develop some expertise and some knowledge while our people are able to execute their jobs. Because if we didn't have that kind of communication structure, I think I'd be constantly bombarded with questions and concerns and the like. In this community, the way it's come together has created the opening for us to do new and different things, because all the air isn't getting sucked out by people who have a lack of information, filling the information gap with misinformation. So I would say that's probably the best partnership stuff that has happened for us, is that I'm able to get real-time, good, valuable information so our people can focus on what they need to do here. And to respond quickly, if someone needs a couple days off because they've had to have a COVID test or whatever, we've been managing that so far. And the amount of things we can do remotely have allowed us to not have people hit their own leave time after they've burned all the COVID time, because they can work remotely. And I think it's saved a lot of families, it's protected a lot of people's income, and it allows us just to keep moving forward.
Thanks, Jeff. Lots of goodness in there. I do think it's worth noticing, and I think we've said this in a lot of these sessions, but just the extent to which this community and this county have managed this so much better than a lot of our neighbors and peers. And certainly, I think the state is to be commended, because generally we've had better results than a lot of other states, but we are extremely lucky here. And the collaboration of these groups that you mentioned, and the communications and the shared understanding about what our goals are. There's no political back and forth. There's no people politicizing or trying to cast doubt on what the directives are coming from the lead healthcare practitioners and the public health director, et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, we've seen some of that in some of the other communities, is, people wanting to go in different directions. And I think because of this very unified strategy and all of this wonderful collaboration, these relationships that everyone has built, and the resources, frankly, that some of our partners have put behind all of this, has really positioned us for success in a way that, not everyone's been experiencing the same crisis that we have. So I just can't say enough. I know many of you have a lot to do with that, and we're very grateful. We've had some good questions coming in the chat, so I know we'll get to those as best we can, just to make sure we get to the ones we had sent in advance. For anyone who's interested in how they can continue with professional development during this time, I think almost all of us are probably experiencing, this is unfortunately one area of our budgets where we have some opportunity to cut. There's a lot of components of each of our budgets where unfortunately we just can't make adjustments. But how can people continue to grow their knowledge and skills while social distancing, while not going to actual conferences? And frankly, we're also zoomed out. It's like the last thing I might want to do right now is register for an extra professional development thing on Zoom. But if there's particular resources you might recommend or suggestions you might have for people within our area workforce to continue building their skills, continue positioning themselves for success within their existing workplace or maybe their next opportunity, I think everyone would love to hear what you might suggest there. So I'm going to start with Bill this time. It's hard to randomize 4 people. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, professional development, you said it, I think really poignantly, is that, yeah, there are so many opportunities that exist. You get so many emails about, where you could learn different things in a variety of industries, especially, certainly in my role. And you got to pick and choose to see which ones are the best for you, maybe for your team. But it's great because a lot of them are free. Certainly, the travel and entertainment budgets certainly have been reduced significantly as we're all remote and not traveling. But you really have to continue to encourage your teams with the premise that I think we all are on this, is lifelong learning. And, so with that premise of lifelong learning, professional development is all part of it. I mean, there's basic pieces that you need to do continually, such as your sexual harassment training, your conflict, resolution training, and certainly your COVID related training that you need that could be considered under professional development. But as supervisors in general, I think utilizing a lot of new resources that are out there from those webinars, from your professional associations, and even like we partner with Lindia, which is part of LinkedIn, and there's a lot of free courses related to that that you really need to be able to afford your team's time to be able to do it. The challenge is that we're all working really, really hard. And as you just said, you have back to back Zoom meetings. It's really, really hard to find the time to break away for 30 minutes or an hour to continue with your professional development. But you need to continue to do that. And then the last thing I would say is, we're really intentional, certainly with our faculty, in affording time because they're in a different modality in teaching our students, which is our mission. And so providing that time with our teaching and learning with technologies professionals to help our faculty because they really, really want to do well. They don't want to just do Zoom meetings in their classrooms. They don't think they take a lot of pride in it, and they're just actually really impressive. And I know sometimes the view out there is that, are we paying a lot of money just for Zoom meetings, for our students? I would say the ones that I've been aware of are just really impressive. Really impressive. So professional development with our faculty and our staff is really critical. It's just a matter of trying to find time and making it a priority.
Thanks, Bill. Carrie?
Sure. And what Bill said is at the college, twice a year, we set aside 2 professional development days just for staff and faculty. And that's our focus. We teach each other. We bring in outside speakers. So that's one thing an organization can do is look at yourself and look at your resources and tap into those. We also have a variety of short and long-term workshops that are available online through webinars here at the college. We also have micro-credentials, which are, a series of credit classes that prepare individuals for the specific skills for a specific job. Again, that's another entry path onto your career. There's also classes applied towards an associate's degree. I would also say that the Tompkins Workforce, the Career Center on the Commons, they are another great resource. They have a system called Matrix, which, somebody can sign up for this and do all the classes from home. And it's a free resource that they offer to individuals of Tompkins County, which I think is a great opportunity for individuals looking for work or for individuals, who are currently employed, want to keep up on their skills or gain new skills. And then also BOCES. BOCES also has some really great programs that are available in the community. I think we all try to look and see what those are and make referrals if we don't think that will offer them.
Thanks, Carrie. I didn't quite catch what you said at the end there, but hopefully we can, maybe someone can help us out by putting some comments in the chat if they were able to catch it. I'm going to move to Jeff now.
Just 2 quick things. One, for all those mandatory trainings we got to do, we have carved out windows of periods of time for them to do instead of everyone having to join the same meeting. So the more stuff you can put online that they can access later and be able to then prove that they have taken it with a certificate or whatever, the better off you are, instead of the one big meeting. So everybody tries to get something. Maybe over a 90-day period, you just have to access it, get your stuff into your supervisor, and you're done. And also register for all of those webinars that you want. The beauty of it is people are recording those and they'll email it back to you. So when you can't attend, you can still access it later instead of trying to back to back Zoom meetings. I know we get all Zoom fatigue. When you get that recording, you can go back to it at a later date. And I've done a lot of that where I've registered, did not appear, but I was able to access whatever they were covering at a later date when I had time and if I had Zoom fatigue and just did not want to log on to one more thing.
Thanks, Jeff. And that's why we make these sessions available on our YouTube after the fact. So we're right there with you. Mary, how about you?
Add a couple things. I do think that for employees, they're dealing with a lot right now. So many of us have a kind of hybrid model. So we have some people that are working on site and some people who are working off site. And there's a lot of stresses and strains that we didn't expect because we didn't know we'd be in this for so long, and we didn't necessarily have a lot of experience with hybrid working models. So we've put a lot of time into creating opportunities for people to come together to talk about how do you manage a hybrid team. If you're in a hybrid space, how do you make sure you're getting the time you need with your supervisors, things like that. In terms of continuing our professional development, you know, I don't know that I can add a lot to it. I do think sometimes finding podcasts that you think are interesting is a great way to go, because you can put your headphones in and get out and take a walk, which then gets you sort of away from your screen. And I think that there's an element of our sustainability in all of this that has to do with taking care of ourselves and balancing all of the different things that we prioritize. And I'd also point out the eCornell keynotes. So if you go to eCornell and .com/keynotes, those are free. And they're actually terrific if you haven't seen them, and you can watch them live, or you can view the recordings later. If you have employees who are not fully stretched and are interested in doing it, all of us are doing things now that we did not expect to have to do. It's not in our regular work, and that creates opportunity for people to do, we call them gigs, but short-term assignments to fill. My dog has decided to drink his water bowl down to nothing, so I'm sorry about that. But I would encourage you to talk to people who are eager to use this as a learning time, because we all have things that we need help with, and if it's something that a person can add to their portfolio of expertise, it's just terrific. If you don't have one, ask somebody to be your mentor or coach. You don't have to do those by Zoom. You can do them by good old-fashioned phone calls. And sometimes it's just having somebody help you understand what you have to offer going forward. And I guess the last thing I would say is, I think we all need to be patient with ourselves and kind to ourselves, because this is a remarkable time, and we may not be advancing exactly the way we thought we were going to, or feel like we learned something new in that given week. And that's okay, because ultimately when we get out of this, we want to be well and we want to be healthy.
Oh, I thought I was not unmuted, but I already was. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. We all need to remind ourselves of that. And it is really too easy to get caught up in the churn of extra work and too many Zoom meetings, and forget to take that walk outside. I love your podcast recommendation too. So the last question that we had, and I apologize because I do have to jump into another meeting, so I'm going to tee this up and then I'm probably going to disappear and I'm going to miss probably the best part, was for each of you to share what makes you most optimistic or excited about your industry. You know, again, you've alluded a few times here and there to not going back to doing things the old way just because, getting rid of the things that didn't work, finding new ways to do things, and new opportunities from all this. So love for you to add anything about excitement, opportunities, and innovations that you didn't already mention. And then David, we can make sure we address any other Q&A in the chat that we didn't get to after that. Thanks, everyone. I guess, why don't we start with Jeff this time?
We're a people business, and we've held on to our people. It's inspiring what our people have accomplished. that we haven't had people leave because of COVID. You know, there's all those stories, all these teachers were going to bail on education because of COVID, and all these people were going to just no longer be in our business. And these people have gutted it out in really tough conditions we have the most challenging kids up here in our communities. And I think that's the thing that gives me hope is if they can do this, they can pretty much do anything. So we're not going to give up. That's the thing that keeps us going is we know we have the right people on the bus and we're still heading in the right direction. It's going a lot slower because we can't get as much accomplished. But we are still going in the right direction with the right kind of people. And I consider that just an inspiring part of my business.
So maybe can I build on that, Jeff, and just say the country needs education now desperately. We are poised to help deal with some of the country's long-standing issues. Science and research is where we are finding and will continue to find the solutions to this health crisis and the ones that will follow. We are facing again the country's issues related to addressing racism and really creating a sense of belonging. All of the issues that we have a fractured country. All of those issues, all of the things that we've been dealing with as individuals and in our communities, all call for a recommitment to the education of every person in our communities, because that is how we solve problems. It's how we have solved them in the past, and it's how we'll solve them in the future. And I guess I would say one other thing, which is we are a resilient bunch. We will get by this, but I hope we don't forget the lessons that we're learning, because we'll be better if we remember them and if we continue to face the issues that we're dealing with. The last thing I'll say is we are so lucky to be in the community that we have. We've got the head of the hospital, the head of the health department. There's partnerships all over with leaders at all of the major institutions. If you know anybody that lives someplace else, it helps you to realize you can't make the virus go away. But when you have that level of strength in the community, we are addressing it and dealing with it in a way that we just owe those leaders a huge debt of gratitude for everything they've done. And I also agree with Jennifer that New York State has been well led through a really difficult time. So, you know, there's always things to find to be grateful for.
That's really good insight, Mary, and I appreciate ending on such a positive note with your perspectives. Yeah, I agree. The leadership, as someone who's new to New York State, the leadership here has been great. I put in the chat earlier, to Jeff's point, the accessibility of Dr. Stallone and Frank have been amazing. Like, I know that they are not, if anyone is zoomed out, they're zoomed out, because they have been so present and the communication has been so frequent from both of them during this time, and it's been appreciated greatly. So very valid points. Next, I'm gonna throw it over to Carrie with the last question.
Yeah, I would agree with what my colleagues have said. And I also, what excites us is that, you know, can't has really been taken out of our vocabulary. And we have, you know, learned that we can do so much more than we thought we were capable of. And the number of partnerships and just collaboration that has come out of it naturally is very exciting. And that's one thing that I hope that we don't going forward is knowing that we can collaborate together and we can do great things when we come together and work together for our community.
I agree. All right, Mr. Guerrero, you're gonna take us home? This is the last person.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to add that to what everyone said, certainly agree. I think when you think about diversity, equity, inclusion, the social justice crisis that we have. Certainly, we're in an economic and financial crisis. Higher ed is definitely not immune to that. As we're challenged with those issues and trying to respond humanely to that. I would also add we're in an environmental crisis, and I'm really proud of our school that we're continuing the work on environmental sustainability efforts, as well as certainly the social justice work that under the leadership of President Collado and our provost, Lejeune Terry Cornish, have done. I mean, really impressive. Makes you really proud that work has not just been pushed to the side because we're in a health pandemic. It's really critical that, you might say it's a perfect storm with all these variety of crises that are going on, but it's also just really impressive, the resiliency to keep our mission pressing forward.
That's great, Bill. And one of the things I want to just throw out there before we start taking some Q&A, prior to my career shift to doing events full time, I was an administrator at the middle school level for like 13, 14 years. And one of the things that we used to always talk to our staff about, and that we used to implore with the organization that I was with, was that the importance of teaching grit and resilience to our students. And we used to work with a lot of teachers that were new and fresh from Teach for America. And they would often ask the question, well, how do you teach grit? How do you teach resilience? And this is it. Like, if there ever was a time to have the perfect answer to that question, we are all living through it right now. Because one of the things that we continue to bring up as we have these workshops is that it's not bad enough that we're dealing with a pandemic, but we're also dealing with clear results of climate change. And we're also dealing with the economic collapse, while also dealing with a ton of like civil unrest and change that's happening in our community in terms of just doing a better job of working toward equality. And so if there ever was a time to put the focus on teaching our students the importance of trying to persevere and to not give up, and how we as a community can come together to overcome huge obstacles that seem unsurmountable, this is the time. So a huge shout out to all of you for all the work that you're doing. You guys are leaders in this community, and just continue to do what it is that you're doing, because I do believe that this generation, and I know people have been saying this forever, but this will be the generation that will truly create the change that we hope to see in this country as a result of what it is that we're dealing with right now. What was the quote that Jennifer teased you about earlier, Bill? Don't pass up the opportunity to make the best out of a disaster. What did you say?
Crisis is a terrible thing to waste.
Right, there you go. And I think that can be like our new mantra going into 2021, that crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I had never heard that saying before either, but I think that it makes a ton of sense given the time. We did have some really great questions come up in the chat. What I'll do, so that not every feels obligated to answer, where if any one of the panelists wants to take said question, just feel free to be like, yeah, I can tackle that. Or if multiple of you all would like to give perspectives, that would be great. The first question that we have here is from Allie. What steps are you taking to address learner needs or modalities, adult or yearning, in the virtual programming? Are there special strategies that you are using or looking forward to? And again, any of our panelists can feel free to jump in.
So I can try to jump in here, and I apologize if I cut out. So I think from the college, from our perspective, it's meeting the learner where they're at and what their needs are at that time. So like I mentioned earlier, we have like several different modalities, but within that is flexibility. So you are in a face-to-face class, but that face-to-face class can also have online work that you do asynchronously. And then if for some reason, you need to be at home with your family, you can then zoom into that face-to-face class. So our face-to-face classes are taking place from rooms where we have installed, webcams and the necessary technology so that students can either be in person or they can be at home, depending upon what those needs are at the time. The same thing with our live online classes. Again, we're using the Teams, Microsoft Teams as our mode for our live online. And then again, if a student is unable to make that, they connect with the instructor and do their work offline. Utilizing Microsoft Teams has allowed our students and our faculty to connect when needed. You can call a faculty member, during their office hours right through Teams. So faculty members can be very responsive. They don't have to give out their personal cell phone numbers anymore. You can do online chat sessions through Teams, which again, makes the access to faculty during class or out of office hours, it's increased that access for both faculty and students, improving their educational experience and improving their personal connection through the use of technology.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Carrie. Jeff, I saw that you were going to chime in. Did you still want to share?
Sure. I was just going to say that very similar to Carrie's responses, we have so much content up in our Google Classrooms for each classroom that students can move in and out of the modality if they have to be out because they're quarantined for a period of time. And the teachers teach in person, and we're streaming it live, so there could be interaction with students at home as well. So that's a very different model than cutting those students out of that class and having a separate teacher for them. It's still the same teacher, they get the same content. And we've had more students want to come back to the in-person model since we began rather than move in the other direction. So we've seen that as a hopeful sign.
That's great. Another really good question. Any tips for engagement that you have found successful that can be transferred to non-education arenas?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with this. There's a lot that can be transferred. So we're all employers as well as being educational institutions. So we're all facing much of the same, many of the same issues that you all are in your businesses. And the one sort of very specific tip I would give you is there is a big difference between checking in with people on Zoom and checking in with people. And so if you have not picked up the telephone and spoken to a person privately, so most of us are busy, we're all really zoomed out, and so you get together and you say, so how's everybody doing? And everybody goes, good, I'm good. I would just add to your list of connections, pick up a telephone, FaceTime or a phone call, and ask a person directly. How are you? Do you need anything from me? How can I be helpful? Share the experience with them in a private way so that our goal should be that no one feels isolated in a group. And the way to do that is to recognize that right now the human connection is just enormously important.
I don't know if anyone else had any different perspectives on that, but the follow-up question to that is really great. And it would be awesome to maybe let everyone speak to this if they felt so inclined. The next question is, I'm curious if any of the schools have bumped up their mental health resources. And I think that directly ties to what you were just speaking about a little bit, Mary, there. So it'd be cool to hear from different perspectives from all of you on where you land on that. Jeff, I saw you ready.
I'm sorry, I can't. I didn't mean to cut anybody off.
No,
if I did. So yeah, we've increased our the access to our mental health counselors. So they have the availability to contact mental health counselors as needed remotely. The college itself also has the EAP program for our staff. Allowing us access to mental health services year round if needed. going to look at our structure around wellness as a whole and created, a department that is more holistic. So you go to one department and, they can help you, with your food insecurities, with your mental health, your physical health, recovery services. So that's another part, I think, in addition to mental health, are our folks who struggle with addiction, making sure that we have services such as those available to our students, especially now. So our recovery services, again, available in person, but they're also available remotely. They're still meeting in groups and having, just connecting sessions with each other for support.
That's really great work, Carrie. It's super important during this time. Mr. Matteson, did you want to share some perspective as well?
Just to say that because this is a public health crisis, we're hyper vigilant about what's happening with individuals, especially with our K-12 students. So no matter whether a student is in person or remote, I think the sensitivity of our folks is really, the antenna is up in a big way, and they're monitoring each other and monitoring students very closely. It's the one area where you won't see us making any cuts into the mental health arena. We know we can't afford that. I mean, we'll go with larger class sizes before we get rid of the supports for students coming out of this particular era. So we're monitoring really close. We can have a in-person classroom going on and streaming, and if a student's not showing up, the follow-up is like immediate. And I would say when a student was absent before, everybody was in person, we may not have had the immediate follow-up other than to call home and say your student's reported absent today and make sure you brought in the reason. Now, I mean, we have to be concerned. What is happening? This summer when we weren't allowed to run extended summer year and summer school on campus, from the beginning we said, all right, no student goes 3 days without a contact from an adult, even though we were doing some remote work, because we had to connect with these families during that time. And I think some people have gotten into that habit. We're still delivering a lot of food to our remote students, and so we're able to get eyes on the home, talk to folks when we do some deliveries. So the monitoring is a lot better, I think, which means the support, not monitoring to like Big Brother monitor, just, are you okay? Is there anything else that you need? So I think, if anything, it's been a net positive for making our connections with our community in that way.
That's great. And again, I know it is a non-ending task. It is a huge uphill battle to tackle, but the way that this community has done it has been phenomenal. So a huge shout out to all of you. I know that we are a little over on the time, but thank you for those of you that stuck around. Terry, do not think that your comment went unnoticed. When someone responds with fine, it means feelings inside not expressed. And I know that I have been guilty of that as well, where people have been like, just a brief check-in, how you doing? And I'm just like, fine. But it's just like that meme or that GIF where the dog is sitting in the room and everything's on fire. And he's just like, this is fine. This is fine. I have felt that way a few days during this time. So I think it is important, as we pointed out, and as Ritz has said that she does with the membership aspect of the chamber, to take the time to pick up the phone and just call. And that human connection is so important during this time. So again, thank you for your perspectives. I do want to say again to our panelists, thank you all for being here today. I think that this networking at noon really resonated with me and hit home. So thank you for your time. Thank you to Jeff, thank you to Bill, thank you to Carrie, and thank you to Mary. Thank you all for our attendees for being here, and for the people that will watch this video later. And lastly, thank you to our networking at noon sponsors, One Step Coaching, Sharaba Walker, the Hilton Garden Inn, CFCU, and Sheldrake Point Winery. You guys stay safe, be blessed, and thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you around. All right, thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.